Today, we're diving into the absolutely horrifying case of Ram Bhawan and Durgawati. They were a couple from Uttar Pradesh in India who, for more than a decade, ran this criminal enterprise, completely hidden in plain sight. Just this past February in 2024, a special court handed them the death sentence. Now, you have to understand, that's the most extreme punishment in the entire Indian legal system. It's a verdict they only reserve for crimes that are so awful they don't just break the law, they profoundly shock the conscience of the entire nation. So, the big question, right? Who were these people? And how on earth did they manage to keep such a dark, twisted secret hidden for over 10 years? It's just mind-boggling.
Okay, so to everyone on the outside, Ram Bhavan was just this simple, friendly junior engineer. He and his wife, Durgawati, they built up this whole image of being completely harmless and welcoming. I mean, they were so trusted that neighbors would literally let their own kids go play at their house. In everyone's eyes, this was the couple who could do absolutely no wrong.
And, this was a very calculated choice. Ram, because of his job, was actually entitled to government housing, but they deliberately chose to rent private apartments instead. By doing that, and by moving around a lot for his job transfers, between different districts, they made sure nobody could ever get too suspicious. It was really the perfect strategy to keep up that clean, friendly image no matter where they went. Okay, now this is where the story gets really wild. How did this whole thing, hidden for a decade in a small town in India, finally get busted? Well, it all started with a single clue from over 7,000 kilometers away in Belgium. No joke. So it all kicked off with just one grainy video. But then, as the police in Belgium started digging, they found a pen drive, and on it were thousands of these horrific clips. But here's the kicker, the one clue that changed everything. It was the sound. In the background of these videos, you could hear Hindi songs playing. That one tiny detail, that sound, was the critical piece of evidence that pointed the whole international investigation straight to India. So with the eyes of the world on them, India's CBI, that's their Central Bureau of Investigation, they had to fast-track this thing. But when the team finally got to the address they traced, Durgawati herself met them at the door of this just completely normal, decent-looking home. The investigators were so shocked by how ordinary they looked that their first thought was, wait, we must have the wrong address. This can't be it. Well, after searching the house and confirming their absolute worst suspicions, they arrested the couple on November 17th, 2020. And it was only then, after the arrests, that the true, horrifying reality of what had been happening behind those closed doors for years finally started to come out. And what they uncovered was a system, a chillingly effective one. Ram and Durgawati specifically targeted the most vulnerable kids, young boys, some as young as 5 years old, usually from families that were struggling financially. They'd lure them in with promises of food, gifts, maybe a new phone, but once the kids were inside, that friendly neighbor act just vanished. The abuse was all filmed, and then they'd use those videos to blackmail the victims, forcing them to bring their own cousins and relatives into the trap. Over 200,000. That's the estimated number of video clips they produced and sold on the dark web. And get this, the source material for that massive number was 34 original horrific videos. They would just splice those up into smaller clips and sell them off to buyers all over the world. Countries like the US, China, Brazil, even Afghanistan. People said Ram was always on his laptop, and now it all makes sense. He'd figured out the whole system, how to use encrypted file sharing, how to use cryptocurrency like Bitcoin for payments. It was a pretty sophisticated dark web operation. And that technological shield is exactly what allowed this monstrous business to fly completely under the radar for years, making them thousands and thousands of dollars. All right, so let's get into the evidence. I mean, what did they find that was so convincing it ultimately sealed this couple's fate? This really just shows you the sheer scale of what they were doing. Remember how international authorities could only trace 3 phone numbers? Well, when investigators searched the house, they found 12 mobile phones. Not to mention 2 laptops, the hard disk with all 34 of the original videos, and 679 photos of the victims. Now, after she was arrested, Durgawati tried to play dumb. She denied everything, claiming she had absolutely no idea what her husband was up to. But that story completely fell apart. Victim after victim came forward, and they all testified that she wasn't just some innocent bystander. No, they said she was an active participant. She would watch, she would help, and a lot of the time, she was the one holding the camera. So, based on all of that overwhelming evidence, And the absolutely heart-wrenching testimony from more than 30 victims, the court delivered that rarest of the rare verdict we talked about, the death sentence, for both of them. And in what you could call a small justice of justice, the court also ordered that all the money they seized from the couple, well, that would be distributed among the victims to help them out financially.
This whole case is just a terrifying reminder. As technology, the internet, the dark web, as it all becomes easier to access for everyone, everywhere, we may never truly know who is hiding a monstrous secret life. They could be right next door, hiding behind a friendly smile and a closed door. It really forces you to ask a deeply unsettling question about the world we think we know.